Okay, so we're gonna discuss 10 things that you need to do to build a rock solid Azure tenant. Magnus already gave a wonderful introduction, so I'm not gonna keep much time on it. There was a video as well and everything. So let's discuss the security and the structure around Azure. So back in the days when cloud computing was just starting out, there was a lot of mistrust around it. A lot of people were concerned, what will happen to my data, to my application if I put it in cloud? Who has access to it? Who can control it? Who can see my data and so on? As a result of that, all cloud providers advertised cloud computing as very secure. And we need to keep a couple of things in mind when it comes to cloud security, because this selling cloud as a secure place kind of puts people asleep. It puts them off guard because, okay, cloud is very secure place, but to some extent, like it's not like if we just put it in cloud, if we just take our application and data and put it in cloud, and put it in Azure, it doesn't make it secure by default. There are some precautions, there are some steps that we need to take care of. So there's a lot of structure around security when we observe it. Like, for example, first one that comes to mind is physical security, the physical security of the data center and physical security of the server and infrastructure running that data center. So basically, this is, when it comes to Azure, this is top of the art, like best, greatest and latest, like up to best industry standards. We have cameras and alarms. We have security stop on premise constantly. We have barriers, fencing. Everything needs to be accessed by two-factor authentication. We have days of backup power that runs security systems. There's a lot of things when it comes to that physical security. And when we compare it what most of the companies have nowadays, this is way better than like 99.9% organizations will ever have. Exceptions are maybe some financial institutions or military, but most of the companies don't invest in physical security of their data center as much. Then we have network layer, and finally we have virtual machines and applications in those data centers. Now, network is basically the first step where we as a customer, as an Azure consumer, start taking some of the responsibilities for ourselves. Microsoft is still responsible for the physical network security, but there are some network aspects like endpoints and like virtual network security and things like that that we actually need to take care of. Because, for example, if we just like leave unprotected endpoint, like we place our data in Azure and we leave the endpoint as a public access and someone accesses our sensitive data because it was publicly accessible, we cannot actually blame Microsoft for someone stealing our data. It was our fault. Similar thing can go in terms of application security. When it comes to, like, if we place application that's vulnerable to SQL injection, and that's still very painful place for a lot of companies, a lot of applications are still vulnerable to that. If we have a application like that and someone manages again to steal our data because of vulnerability in our software, we cannot blame again Microsoft because we wrote bad code. It's basically up to us to secure that part as well. Fortunately, in Azure, there's a lot of things that helps us how we can actually do that. Microsoft there takes care of some parts. It's concept that is like shared responsibility, where Microsoft takes care of one part of the security, and the rest of the security we have to do it ourselves. But Microsoft enables us with a lot of different tools to actually do that and to actually create secure environment for our application and information. Okay, so first step that everyone needs to do is definitely enable multi-factor authentication. It's a really simple thing. And why? So there's a big change when it comes to identity and account access uh, when moving from on-premises to the cloud. In our on-premises environment, even if someone stole some credentials and managed, like, had access to certain data in our own network, they still would need to actually physically access the network, gain access to the network first, because before they misuse those credentials. With cloud computing, it's much different. We no more have that restriction where someone actually needs to get inside our company and then try to access it. Basically, with cloud services, everything is available from anywhere in the world. Now, credentials are becoming big vulnerability, and based on a lot of security researchers, like 95 point something percent of data breaches and security issues come because of some kind of credential leaks. It can be social engineering, it can be phishing attack, but a lot of times data is stolen, security is in question when credentials are leaked. So by enabling multi-factor authentication, we are adding additional confirmation that we are actually trying to sign in to access any kind of application or database, any kind of Azure resource. We need to provide, besides traditional username and password, we need to provide additional authentication methods. So basically, when I sign into my account, I will be prompted, and most popular thing nowadays is to use mobile phone that supports either call, SMS, or authenticator app, which is pretty popular, pretty easy to use. I have like 40 different accounts in it and works like a charm. And basically, when I try to sign in, I'm automatically prompted on my phone to approve that request, that it's actually me signing in. And if someone else tries to actually sign in, I can deny that access. I know I'm like 100 meters from my computer right now. I'm not trying to sign in, and I get prompted by on my phone that I'm trying to sign in. I can block that request and even report it that it's a malicious attempt or of some kind. So basically, this is providing a lot of additional security when it comes to cloud resources. Also, there's an option very popular nowadays to go completely passwordless and use USB tokens to actually approve that kind of access. Now, that's completely different story, and it kind of have its pros and cons, but it's also a valid option to consider when we are talking to account security. Next thing, and we kind of touched on that in the beginning, in the introduction, is we need to use role-based access control. So basically, we already mentioned back in the days when Microsoft Azure, it wasn't Microsoft Azure that now, back then it was Windows Azure. It has much different structure. Basically, everything was on the subscription. We didn't have any granular access or control over it. So basically, if I wanted to allow Magnus to run single application on my subscription, I had to make him co-admin of my entire subscription. I couldn't say he has access to this application or this set of resources. It was completely different. Now, role-based access control gave us a lot of different options. So it goes from the tenant level, that we can create management groups, and then beneath management groups, we can create subscriptions, and then go a step further, create resource groups, and then under resource groups we have resources. So basically all of these levels are different management levels, and we can assign user with access to any level that we want. And it expanded quite more compared to traditional co-admin and admin roles. We have hundreds of predefined role assignments nowadays, but we also have ability to create our own custom role assignments. So basically we can create our custom rules if something is not covered by default roles by themselves, which is really rare. Like we're talking about a couple of hundred different role assignments by default, and you can probably cover 99% of the scenarios that can be happening. And how it actually works. So basically, if I provide a user with contributor access to subscription level, that user would automatically have contributor access on everything below that subscription. So basically, complete subscription, all resource groups in that subscription, and all resources running on that subscription. Now, if I apply a different user with the reader access to a certain resource group, that user would not see anything else on that subscription. That user would have access to that specific resource group and could access resources in a read mode on that specific resource group. And if you go even step below, we can assign user with the access on the single resource, and user will basically see that resource group and all the resources, but could make some kind of action only for the resources that is actually assigned role for. So it gave us a lot of flexibility, a lot of granularity, and allowed us to much better control over our resources and how we can provide user access. Okay, next thing that is very important and can help increase security is privileged identity management. So this is the one of the concepts that I'm a big fan of from security perspective. I do a lot of security things in cloud especially, and privileged identity management basically provides concept of something called just-in-time administration and just-enough administration. So basically what it means, we are providing user with a specific role, but that role is not present on the user account by default when user signs in. They actually need to go to portal and activate that role, and only when activating role, they would actually have ability to perform certain actions. So if I provide user with ability to be a security administrator, when they sign in on their account, they would actually just see resources like regular user resources, like applications that they can access, or mail, or SharePoint, or whatever, everything that's tied to their user account as a user, but they wouldn't see any kind of privileged roles like administrator roles and stuff. So this security administrator would see everything that a regular user sees, and if a user actually needs to perform some things that only security administrator can do, they actually have to go to a portal, activate their role. They need to say for how long they want to perform that role, and then actually perform the work that's associated with that role. This provides us with that just-in-time access, or just-in-time administration, where even if the credentials leaked, and even if someone somehow bypasses MFA, they still cannot do much damage if they actually don't know that this account needs to be activated to perform a certain operations. It's kind of a damage control. Another thing, the part just enough administration, is that this option is giving us ability to see how often users actually use certain roles. I've seen that many times in organizations, such audits are not performed regularly, and we have even users that left company years ago and still have certain administrator rights and stuff. So. Privileged identity management provides us with periodic reports telling us which users actually used their role or didn't use their role for a certain amount of time. So basically, if I have a user that is, I don't know, enterprise administrator and didn't actually enable that, didn't activate that role for last year, that user probably doesn't need that role anymore. So it gives us opportunity to review what privileged assignments are given to users, and we can actually decrease the numbers of privileged accounts in our environment. Next thing is to use network security groups. This is especially when we talk about virtual networks and virtual machines. If you're using this part, this is basically the first step to protect our resources. By default, everything is open and basically anyone can access anything. Our endpoints in Azure are unprotected if we assign public IP addresses, and a virtual machine without network security group is completely unprotected, and basically any port is open for traffic. Network security groups give us control over traffic, what can come inside or what can come outside. Basically, it provides us with the traffic control, and we can basically allow only certain ports that are necessary for our application to work to be publicly available. Another thing that we need to note is that network security groups can be attached either to network interface on the virtual machine or to network security groups. Either way will work, but I recommend the second one. Go with attaching network security groups to the subnets, because basically attaching them to network interface will create a whole lot of problems. It's perfectly fine when you have 5 virtual machines, but when you have 50, it becomes a problem. When you have 1,000, it's completely unmanageable. So basically, creating subnets that are treated as a logical grouping of your virtual machine. For example, if you look at the classical 3-tier architecture where we have front end, middle layer, and back end, we will basically have first subnet for the front end that will allow traffic over HTTPS, but would block everything else. And on the second subnet for the mid tier, we would disallow traffic from the outside. So basically anything from internet would be disallowed, and allowing only to the virtual machines in the front end to actually communicate with middle tier. And backend would only allow traffic from the middle tier, not even allowing the front end subnet to communicate. So basically, this is a good way to start controlling your traffic and protecting your resources. Optionally, we can use Azure Firewall. That gives us a lot of more options. It's much better control, but the big difference is network security groups are for free, and Azure Firewall can increase your Azure costs substantially. Next thing, web application firewall. Very cool part. Web application firewall is part of application gateway that is basically layer 7 load balancer. But what it does, it provides you with a lot of filtering options. It can distinguish what kind of request is valid and which one is malicious. So basically, application gateway has a built-in ability to prevent SQL injection or cross-site scripting or similar attacks, and recognize which attacks are valid. And basically, only valid requests will pass the application gateway, blocking all other. So basically, I mentioned that in the beginning, this is the way Microsoft can help us secure our applications, even if we write a bad code that is unsecure. Next one is Azure KeyVault. I'm a big fan of Azure KeyVault. I use it for literally anything. Azure KeyVault is a big help. It can help you secure your secrets, password certificates, connection strings. It's used with infrastructure as a code and so on. Why? Well, again, similar to accounts and credentials, secrets, password certificates might need to be treated a little differently in the cloud. They need to be managed in a different way. We need to control who sees what, who can access that. And Azure Key Vault helps us encrypt those information, allow application to access those information when needed, but preventing all other users to actually see those information. Same goes to the connection string. And when it comes to infrastructure as a code, when, a lot of services when we're deploying. So if you're doing cloud and you're building infrastructure, you need to do infrastructure as a code. Otherwise, you're doing it wrong. Basically, it has a lot of different options. It can go to the ARM templates. It can go to Azure PowerShell, Azure CLI. We can use different tools like Terraform, so on. There's a lot of different tools that can help us build infrastructure as a code. But all those, like a lot of services, need some kind of administrator username and password when we are deploying them. And keeping those information in a code is also, again, very bad idea. A lot of people can access a repository. A lot of people probably, everyone that has access to a repository probably don't need to see those kind of secrets. There's also a problem when a lot of times there was a mistake when someone pushed those kind of secrets and usernames and passwords or secret endpoints to a public repository, and everyone could actually access that. So this can create a lot of problems. Infrastructure as a code with Azure Key Vault provides us ability to store those passwords and usernames inside the Key Vault, and then basically call them on deployment. Infrastructure as a code, when it's actually used, is calling the Azure Key Vault, getting those information, is using during the deployment. Completely encrypted, completely hidden, and even the person who is deploying the infrastructure doesn't necessarily need to know what kind of username and password is used during the deployment process. Also, we need to remember to encrypt data. Again, this is something we use Azure Key Vault for, but why we need to do it? Let's first take a step back and say that all data in Azure Data Center is encrypted at rest. So basically everything is encrypted at rest. If I somehow, with all the security, manage to get to Azure Data Center and pull one of the disks out of the server rack and run away with it, it would be completely useless to me. This disk is encrypted and all data is encrypted at rest. The issue, it doesn't need to be an issue, but all data is encrypted with Microsoft provided keys. Microsoft is handling that kind of encryption, and a lot of security standards have a problem with that. So basically, if you want to be compliant according to I don't know, ISO 27001 or I don't, there's a tens of different security protocols and standards that you can follow. If you want to be compliant, but most of them, you actually have to be in charge of those keys that are used during the encryption. So that can create a problem. With Azure Key Vault, we can actually encrypt that data. We can actually encrypt our data with our own managed keys that are stored inside Azure Key Vault. This also can be helpful when we're discussing the exporting of data. For example, if you take Azure Virtual Machine, each Azure Virtual Machine has a virtual disk, and that disk is encrypted at rest. But what happens with that disk when it's exported from the Azure or downloaded to a local machine, it's no longer encrypted. Why? Because it's by default encrypted with Microsoft encrypted key, and you cannot actually decrypt it once you download it. So Microsoft is allowing you to download unencrypted data. But when you encrypt that disk with your own key, with key that you are managing, that disk can be still encrypted. And in this way, we are keeping all data encrypted at all times, even when exporting it out. Okay. Another thing that we need to consider when we discuss security in Azure is to use Azure Security Center. It's amazing product that gives you overall view of your current security situation and allow you to control what's happening to your data. This is basically about security stand, how your current situation, your current resources are standing compared to best practices that Microsoft recommends. So basically, it analyzes all resources that you have inside your subscription or even tenant. It can be on multiple layers, and it takes your current situation, your endpoints, your data, and everything, and it compares that on with what is the current best practice, and tells you, it provides you with a step that you actually need to implement in order to actually secure your tenant more, to secure your Azure resources in a better way. Uh, uh, it's about compliance, it's about hygiene, keeping everything steady, keeping everything up to the standards, and it has a few more tools. For example, just-in-time access uh, for virtual machine. Okay, this is one of my favorite features in Azure Security Center. It provides you with a lot of cool things. Like Azure Security Center gives you guidelines how to make it better, gives you guidelines how to make your resources more secure. It provides you with either, there are a lot of things that you can basically fix with single click, allowing you to like encrypt some stuff or change certain endpoints or install certain antivirus software on virtual machine and so on and so on. So basically, there are a lot of one-click solutions where you just like click button in the Azure Security Center and it resolves it. For other things that are more complicated and cannot be automated or need certain user decisions and stuff, it provides you with step-by-step instructions on how to actually can achieve that. But still, I really like just-in-time access for Azure virtual machines. Okay, now I'm going to explain why. Big problem that can become when we want to manage our virtual machines from outside virtual network. So basically, best practice is definitely that we need to either have point-to-site or site-to-site connection to our virtual network, and then access our virtual machines and manage them from a secure environment, from secure network. But many times it's not possible. Either our organization doesn't have infrastructure for that, or we are constantly traveling and we cannot provide all users with point-to-site VPN and so on and so on. And then we need to keep RDP port or PowerShell port open to actually do some things. This is generally very, very, very bad idea. I'm going to tell you why it's a bad idea. I created 4 blank virtual machines, 4 virtual machines that are just Windows Server 2019, nothing on them, like blank virtual machines. Only thing that was specific to those virtual machines was that they had RDP port open. 3389 was open on those virtual machines, and you could actually access them from outside, over the internet, from outside the network. What bad guys do, they are basically scanning public IP addresses range and looking for openings, and they found that my virtual machines are opened. In a single month, those virtual machines were hit in total 160,000 times by brute force attack. So basically, if you leave 3389 open, they're gonna bombard it with brute force trying to get in. This is why it's really bad to actually leave that port open. Now, with just-in-time access in Azure Security Center, we can actually create similar situation to privileged identity management, where we can say, okay, this port is actually closed, but we can request opening of that port from specific IP or IP ranges for a certain period of time. So basically, if I'm doing my any kind of work and I need to access specific virtual machine from my home network to fix something, I can go to just-in-time VM access. I can start this type of access from my current IP address for a certain amount of time, and then do my work. Anyone else coming from different IP address will not be able to access it. Also, when the time I allocated upfront expires, I will not be able to work on that anymore, and I will actually need to go to portal again to activate it for extended period of time if I'm not done with it. Finally, very cool new feature. It's not really new anymore. It's over a year now, but still, one of the latest security features that we had is Azure Sentinel, that basically creates a lot of confusion when it was compared to Azure Security Center. Basically, Azure Security Center is for hygiene and guidelines on how your Azure security needs to look like, but Azure Sentinel is about live threat hunting and analyzing data on the fly to actually detect things that are happening right now. It works as a certain log warehouse that we can basically throw any kind of, it's not limited to Azure only, we can basically throw any kind of log, even from our on-premises environments, from different clouds. We can throw everything in there and then use Azure Sentinel with excessive machine learning capabilities. We can create our own Python scripts to analyze data and so on, and try to detect things that are happening before they actually happen. So this is not only for keeping the guard, but it's actually to help you live hunting threats and possible security issues while they're actually happening. Okay, do we have any kind of questions?